So this evening, I've entitled the talk Fostering Friendship. And this talk was really sparked for me by an encounter that Bodhi Paula and I had about a week and a half ago on a hike. We were hiking up Grotto Canyon, the riverbed, and we got to the waterfall, and then we continued on. And Bodhi Paula really likes to hike in silence. So we were in silence, and a couple of women approached us and asked if we were locals, and then asked a bit about the terrain and the hike and what was coming up. And of course, some chit chat, small talk ensued. And then they started asking more questions, and they found out I was a Buddhist nun, and the older woman. So it was a mom and a daughter. The mom was in her early 50s, and the daughter was in her late 20s. This mom just lit up like a Christmas tree. She's like, I'll never forget this day the rest of my life, and I've never had that experience. When people find out I'm a Buddhist nun. And then we ended up the silence was gone, the cone of silence was lifted. Bodhipala went along cheerily, and we ended up spending the rest of the day together. We had lunch together and came down together, and it was over 3 hours. And they were asking so many questions about life, about dealing with a 15-year-old boy and, a thirst for more meaningful connection within community, things about marriage. And I came away with such renewed appreciation for the Buddha's teachings, because he speaks to all of these things, and the teachings are so very, very practical. And it made me start thinking about friendship and relationship. And so important that our practice, our formal meditation practice, is spilling out into all the areas of our lives, and especially into the relational field, where the things that we're cultivating on the cushion, where we're becoming more honest with ourselves and more courageous and more patient and more compassionate. May these be spilling out and overflowing into our interactions with people that we live with, people that we work with, people that we recreate with. And it made me think there's two suttas in the middle length discourses that are often referred to, because they're kind of like these are the ideal monks. This monastery is the ideal monastery. They were practicing together very, very well. And there were three of them, three monks, and twice the Buddha goes and visits these three monks. So the first one is Majjhima Nikaya, the middle length discourses, sutta number 32, I think, might be 31, and then later sutta 127. And it's Anuruddha, who's actually a cousin of the Buddha, and two of his companions, Nandiya and Kimbala. And it's really significant to me when the Buddha approaches them. They spend a lot of their days practicing and in meditation, and Anuruddha spots the Buddha, and he's like, guys, come on. Our teacher is here. Our teacher is visiting. And the very first question that the Buddha asks Anuruddha, Nandiya, and Kimbala is, he says, it's sutta number 31. He says, I hope you are keeping well, comfortable, not having any trouble getting alms food. And so this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, the Buddha came way before Maslow and knew that it's very important for us to be have our physical needs met and be okay. This is why Buddhist monastics have 4 requisites the lay people are providing, and it's food and shelter and clothing and medicine. These are the 4 basics to be okay and not be terribly stressed and in survival mode. And they are like, yes, 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 we're getting alms food, no problem. And the second question the Buddha asks is, I hope you're all living in concord with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. So the very next need that we have is for harmony, for it to be harmonious enough, peaceful enough, for our emotional and psychological needs to be being met. And it's very significant to me that the Buddha asks this before he asks them anything about their spiritual life, their meditation, their insights. After he knows that they're being well fed and that they're getting along and that everything's okay in the community, that's when he then starts to ask about their meditation. Those are the third and the fourth questions that the Buddha asks. So this need for connection and this need for community is very deep and necessary, and something that in our modern culture we're in crisis around. People are feeling more and more isolated and more disconnected. A survey, these are American statistics, sorry about that, but a survey almost over 30 years ago in the early 90s, 3% of the US population felt isolated. And in 1921, 30 years later, it was 12%. 12% of people were feeling isolated and disconnected. So it's an extremely important need for us, and the Buddha has so much to say about it. Just to underscore the importance, there's an incredible TED Talk I definitely recommend you watch if you're at all interested in TED Talks. It's like 12 minutes long, and it's actually one of the 25 most popular. So some of you might have seen it. It's, if you Googled longitudinal and happiness, you would get there. Or you can just go to the TED site and look at the 25 most popular talks. And it's a Harvard prof, and he's reporting on the longest study probably ever. I think now it's gone on, well, it started in 1938. In 1938, they began a study. It was in 1938, so of course the study is all men. But regardless, I can get past that. They finally, like, I think maybe 20 years ago, they started to send surveys to the wives of some of these men. They had over 700 men, and half of them were, I think, second year Harvard students, and the other, this is all in Boston, and the other half were the same age, but they had all grown up in basically the poorest neighborhood in Boston. And the study was just this longitudinal study about their lives, and they've been followed. And so I'm not even sure that any of these men are still alive. during the TED Talk, but the TED Talk's from about 12 years ago. There's 60 of them still alive. And what they found from this study, and they've studied their health, their fitness, their cholesterol, their relationships, their work life, their hobbies. And it's very thorough, and every couple of years. And what they find is that when someone has decent relationships, they are much healthier and they live longer. When we have healthy relationships, it even affects our physiology. It's really, really important. And I think so many of us are aware of that. So what does the Buddha have to say? He is the first and the greatest psychologist. In the numerical discourses, in the Book of Fours, there's a short sutta where the Buddha talks about attracting and sustaining good relationships. And he says, mendicants or monks, there are these 4 means of sustaining a favorable relationship. What 4? Giving, endearing speech, beneficent conduct, and impartiality. These are the 4 means of sustaining a favorable relationship. Giving, endearing speech, beneficent conduct, and impartiality under diverse worldly conditions, as is suitable to each case. These means of sustaining a favorable relationship, here's the simile, are the linchpin of a rolling chariot. So I know I'm supposed to be talking about similes, so there's the simile. It's the linchpin of a rolling chariot. To have these, to understand these 4 means of connecting and deepening a relationship. So the first one is giving, the second one is endearing speech, and the third one is beneficent conduct. This means conduct that's beneficial. Maybe a more understandable translation of the Pali word is that one is looking out for the other's benefit. You have your friend's good well-being in mind, that you're giving advice for your friend to have well-being, and that you're also encouraging that and maybe modeling that beneficent conduct. And then impartiality is that you're not a fair weather friend, that you're the same whether your friend or the person you're in relationship with, maybe even your partner, whether your partner's employed or not employed, whether they're healthy or not healthy, whether they're depressed or not depressed, that there's this impartiality that you stick with it through thick and thin under diverse worldly conditions. Whatever the conditions, you're still there by their side as their friend. And the Buddha goes on to say, as is suitable to fit each case. And this means that, for different relationships, for different people, certain ones of those 4 are more significant, more meaningful. And it's interesting. There's, I don't know if you know, about 30 years ago, this Baptist pastor wrote a book, 5 Love Languages, and became quite popular. This idea that in partnership, people have different love languages. And those 5 love languages in this modern book are giving gifts. This is the giving. The acts of service. This is also the giving. Endearing speech, like affirmations and encouragements and acknowledgments. This is the endearing speech. Those are the first 3 of the 5 love languages. And the 4th is time together, quality time together. And this probably could be this impartiality, that you hang out, you do things together. And then the 5th one for these partnerships is physical affection, which of course the Buddha is not including when he's talking about friendship. Although for some people it is, hugging, connecting, touching. So the Buddha is saying that the same as this pastor from 30 years ago, that it's wonderful if we can figure out the love language of our friend. And often you can find that out by what are the ways that they show affection. If someone is often doing acts of service, that suggests that's their love language. And so you can reciprocate. And you can also really take it in that they're doing this in their friendship with you. And so this is a wonderful way for us to be sustaining our relationships, and it's a good way for us to be thinking about our relationships. And the Buddha also gives another powerful teaching, a powerful example about relationships. And there are many, but I don't want to talk endlessly tonight. But I really want to include this because I feel like it's the other side. The Buddha is clear that we need to be conscious and deliberate about who we get close to and who we bring in to our inner circle. And there's that expression, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And the Buddha is very clear about that it's so helpful for us to be around wise companions and to be around people that are bringing out the best in us and that we're bringing out the best in them. And this isn't always possible. I mean, you're born into a family. That's just the way it goes. You work in a place, and you work often with a bunch of other people, and you didn't hire them. And so I think workplace is maybe can be one of the most challenging. But the Buddha gives a great model for what we can do, and it is possible. It's challenging, but it is possible, and it's our side. It's our side of the equation. We're not expecting the other person to be different, to change. It's what we can do, and the Buddha models it. And this is from the connected discourses. And it's in Sutta number 7, in book number 7, Sutta, the second Sutta, 7.2, in the connected discourses. And on this occasion, there's a Brahmin that the Buddha's gone to this area, this region, and many, many Brahmins have gone and had these interactions with the Buddha, and they've ended up becoming converted. and becoming followers of the Buddha. And this Brahmin is super upset about that. He's really bothered that all of his friends are now followers of the Buddha. And he basically is like, I'm going to go and give the Buddha a piece of my mind. And that's what he does. So angry and displeased, this Brahmin approached the Buddha and abused and reviled him with rude, harsh words. And when the Brahmin had finished speaking, the Buddha said to him, "What do you think, Brahmin? Do your friends and colleagues, kinsmen and relatives, as well as guests, come to visit you?" "They do, Master Gotama." "Do you then offer them some food or a meal or a snack?" "I do, Master Gotama." "But if they do not accept it from you," says the Buddha, "then to whom does the food belong?" And the Brahmin answers, "If they do not accept it from me, then the food still belongs to me." "So too, Brahmin, I do not abuse anyone, do not scold anyone, do not rail against anyone. I refuse to accept from you the abuse and scolding and tirade that you let loose at me. It still belongs to you, Brahmin. It still belongs to you. Brahmin, one who abuses his own abuser, who scolds the one who scolds him, who rails against the one who rails at him, he is said to partake of the meal, to enter upon an exchange. But I do not partake of your meal. I do not enter upon an exchange. It still belongs to you, Brahmin. It still belongs to you. This is an incredible example that the Buddha is giving us, that when that we can have some choices about what energies we begin to have exchanges with and what energies we allow in. And when there's a really difficult energy, a lot of negativity, maybe anger, or maybe jealousy, or a lot of underhanded sarcasm, we can make a decision to just not partake. Just think, literally, he gives this great simile of think of it like food, and don't pick it up and put it in your mouth. Just don't. Just, you know what? I'm not going to partake. And then honestly, that energy stays with that person. Hard to do. A keto, if anyone knows a keto, it's all about this. It's a martial art of like not just being a receptacle where people can just dump. And we don't have a lot of models of this or talk about this, about just no. And we don't need to engage. Don't engage. Just within yourself, keep that energy as much as possible out. And if necessary, if it's at all possible, keep some distance. Remove yourself from that room. Remove yourself from that gossip circle. Don't want them to stop or want them to change or resent them. Just realize, oh, I can actually just stay boundaried here and stay separate. You really can do it. Not partake of the meal. It's a powerful example of boundaries that the Buddha gives us from 2,600 years ago. Circling back to this mother and daughter, and the mother asking about her teenage boy, he's 15. And my experience, this was absolutely the most challenging age. My experience with girls a year earlier, 14 for girls, 15 for boys. And I read a really amazing book that got me through my son's transition through puberty. And it was Get Out of My Life. But first, when you drive me and Judy to the mall, and it was very clear to basically not engage, just because it was no win. You couldn't. And so yeah, stay present, stay there, but don't get involved. Just and I did that, and it was the most skillful thing to do. Yeah, I remember early on when I started practicing and meditating, um, I I started changing quite a bit quite quickly in the beginning because I was living a bit of a wild life. I had a lot to change. And my children were like, I think they were about 20 and 18, something like that, but we were still all living together. And it was it was freaking them out how much I was changing. And they would try very hard to provoke me, almost like deliberately poking me. And a lot of times I would be silent, and that would make it worse. And then I'd be like, well, I can't think of anything to say that would be helpful or useful. And it wasn't a very long period, and we got through it, and eventually we got to figure it out that it was just scary for them, and they felt like I was kind of dying. The mom that they knew, and so they were just trying to make sure I was still alive. But I do remember early on just realizing if I respond to this, it's going to make it worse. It's going to, two wrongs do not make a right. So it is possible. It is possible to do. Hard, but possible, and a great model from the Buddha. And in terms of friendships that we're wanting to be in and that we're wanting to cultivate, this lovely model of giving and using our words in a very beautiful way to encourage and be open and be vulnerable, and looking out for our friends' welfare, and for that to be clear, and just this impartiality that I'm a friend through thick and thin is beautiful teachings of the Buddha, and so practical. So I'll end there and open it up. If anyone has a story to tell or question or comment.
I have a request, Aya. What book of four sutta was that?
Anguttara 432.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Anguttara 432.
I got it. Thank you.